morning, everybody, and welcome to LifeStyleLuminaries.com. That's right, LifeStyleLuminaries.com, and we're part of Creating Calm Network with founder Ann White. Thanks so much, Ann. Anyway, today we have another beautiful day in Boulder. However, we are parked in a different place. We're actually in the little town of Hygiene because we kind of got chased out of Boulder in a really positive way. But we have found this beautiful Methodist church that one of my distributors from It Works Global, she's the minister of this Methodist church, and she asked me when we were doing an inspirational retreat last week, she said, Shay and Tim, have you guys found a place to park your 38-foot diesel motor coach so you're not roaming around the streets of Boulder? And we looked at her and said, no. And she said, well, why don't you come and park on the lot where my church is? It's beautiful. So here we are. We got here on Sunday, surrounded by white fences and beautiful horse farms in Hygiene, Colorado. And it's not a town. It's just a place. So anyway, we feel so blessed because it's very quiet here. And I'm feeling really honored because I have an old friend and a fantastic human being sitting next to me who will be sharing with you some really cool things about his background and what is really an important event here that takes place every year, not only in Boulder, Colorado, but across the country and the world, called the Fringe Festival. But I want to remind everybody before we get going, because you know what happens when I get going, as a Gemini, that last week's interview was really fun because there was about 8 hours between us, and I didn't even know that my guest Carolyn Brennan, B as in boy, RENNAN.com, was from England, and that we would be connecting and have that time difference with her very heavy English accent. She's not from the city. She's actually from Lancashire, which is out in the country, and she warned me that it's a heavier brogue. So we had a great interview, and it's about her going from scientist, pharmacist, her whole adult life until she was 48, which was only 2 years ago, and her deciding that life was too short not to go after her passion and something she had dreamed about, which was to become a model and an actress and possibly even an author down the road at 50, and kind of sharing with you what it takes to feel sexy, feel beautiful at 50. So go check that out. It's at LifeStyleLuminaries.com. Click the radio button at the top and you'll get all the archive shows. Next week, we are going to have my monthly guest, Tracy Joe, and magic moments shared between Tracy Joe and I, because we're absolutely phenomenal muses for each other and we never know what we're going to talk about, but it's always fun, exciting, and sometimes insightful. Who knows? So anyway, on to our show this week. I have David Ortolano sitting next to me, and David's from the East Coast. I swear everybody in Boulder comes from the East Coast or West Coast.
Wicked.
Welcome, David! Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Shay.
You're welcome. So he's just finishing up drinking his green smoothie. We had green smoothies together, and that was our communion space. Mm-hmm. So, David, I want you just to jump in and tell the people what's this whole shtick on the Fringe, and why is it called the Fringe? Where did it get started? And then give us the spiel on how and when you got going with the Fringe in Boulder.
Well, it's actually a really interesting story. The Fringe Festival started in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1947.
Criminy, 47.
Yeah, 1947, and it was actually World War II had just happened. And they and a bunch of people got together in Edinburgh, Scotland, and thought, wow, what a great idea. Let's use the arts and creativity. Creativity is like the opposite of destructivity.
No kidding. Wow.
And so let's use the arts and creativity to get together and make a festival to celebrate life, to have a response to the war that had happened.
No kidding.
And interestingly enough, what went awry, because we're humans and this is what we do.
Right.
We the people who put the festival together had their own idea, like, of what made good art at the time, and what was going to be like the most effective, because this is how festivals get created, and this is how art gets created, is you go out and you select the best of the best singers, dancers, movers, and it's the best of everything. But sometimes that doesn't always mean diverse.
Right.
And after World War II, there was this movement in Germany that with Hitler and the Third Reich that was about cleansing Europe. And what happened with the festival is they created, what Hitler did was he made sure that they were in everything. They were the best singers, the best dancers, the best musicians, the best everything, the cream of the crop of artistic culture, of symphony, of all these things at the time, tended to be mostly male, if not all male.
Wow.
Tended to be Aryan, tended to be blonde, blue-eyed, like that. And so what happened was they staged this festival in Edinburgh, Scotland, and it was all male, blonde-haired, blue-eyed. It was 1947, and a bunch of artists from throughout Europe had a reaction, naturally.
No kidding.
They came and they gate crashed the festival, which means they came and they built performances around the festival.
Wow, I love this.
And they actually were performed in buses and in taxi cabs and on rooftops and in alleyways around the theaters and on the front steps of the theaters they used as theaters. And they created this festival on the Fringe.
On the Fringe, wow.
And a newspaper writer came in 1947, and he came to review the festival, the Edinburgh Festival, which was the other festival. He came to review it, and he wrote in his headline, they wrote a front page article saying that he's spending more time on the festival Fringe than he is in the festival.
I love
and he
it.
coined the term Fringe.
Fringe.
And so every year after that, people started doing the same thing. They came, they crashed the festival, and they crashed the festival every year. So it was street performers around that were performing on the Fringe. And then by about 1952, which was about 5 years into it, they organized just enough. They created a charter, and they organized just enough to protect the integrity of the artists that were on the Fringe, by creating a program, by talking about space and where they were going to perform, and talking about the freedom of artistic creative expression and how that belongs to humans. And so this dialogue began that then spread like wildfire across the world. And so people got the idea, people were going to Edinburgh, Scotland to go to this Fringe Festival, and they started, like, London created a Fringe, Brighton, England has a Fringe, Dublin has a Fringe, and it spread it all through the UK. And then it sort of went into Europe in some places, came over to Canada, and a bunch of it took off. And the Canadian Fringe festivals is like 50 of them.
Wow!
And then down to the United States, the first one was Minneapolis. Was the Minnesota?
Okay, it's the big one in Minneapolis.
It's one of the first ones. I actually think Seattle might have been first.
Okay.
And then Minneapolis and Orlando or something like that.
You bet.
But Minneapolis is the biggest one in North America.
It's massive.
And and so Fringe festivals are really the way they begin is that someone says, "Hey, I think this is a really good idea that people should be creative." I mean, we as humans are creative.
Absolutely.
Like that's what we do. We make love, and then we make babies.
We're the creators.
And that's by nature. The center of our being is creating ourselves,
right? And
creating our universe, and projecting and amplifying our universe. And it's this funny thing that we have in this culture,
right?
Where it's sort of, we think of the arts as something that's entertainment and secondary,
right?
And it's some disconnect that we've had along the way that has made us say, yeah, we're creative, but why would we support and get behind the arts? This is very strange cultural mindset, and nobody supports the art, thinking that it's like, oh, it's that thing that you do on the side, it's extracurricular, or it's not. You do math, science, you do reading and arithmetic, and you kind of like make sure you cultivate the intellect, but and creativity if you have time,
right.
And meanwhile, it's like the core of who we are as people.
It is.
So I think what the fascinating thing about the Fringe movement and what the people in Edinburgh, Scotland saw that first year was, and what they've continued to grow like wildfire across the globe, is this idea that the creative spirit is first and foremost in our world as humans, that we create by nature everything we do, whether we're building a business or we're building a home or we're building a family.
Right.
We're creating that, and there has to be some sort of creative spirit in that.
Right.
And so a festival that focuses on that is something like the Fringe Festival that says we are creative first, that there is nobody who can tell you what your creativity is, that it's you that tells you that. It's your mind, it's your lineage, it's your understanding of the world, that is how you are creative in the world. And so the way the Fringe Festival works is that it's unjuried, which means there's no review. If you want to put up art in the festival, and Chelisa comes to me and she says, I want to do art in your festival. And she says, what do I need to do? And I go, you need to say that you want to do art in my festival.
That's awesome.
And then you have to, we have a space available policy. So we program particular venues, and then if the venue isn't, we program those venues, and if there's no space it's first come first served into that venue or by a lottery. And so you get in, you apply online, you fill out an electronic application, and then you go into a lottery pool, and you either get drawn or not.
Right.
Those get placed in space available. If you decide not to do the festival, you drop out, and then someone else, there's a wait list for your spot.
Got it.
And then you can also do this option called BYOV, which is like bring your own venue.
You bet. Bring your own venue. That's what I was going to say.
So you guys, for example, could say, hey, we do this radio show, or we do little music performances in our bus.
Right.
And and I go, great, I'll put you on the schedule. And that's BYOV. And then we have this part of the festival also in Boulder that's sort of unique to the festival, to our festival, because of Boulder being such a gypsy town and such a free-flowing community. I have this part that's called Fringe Central, or what I lovingly refer to as Fringing the Fringe.
Fringing the Fringe.
So people call me all the time and they go, "Oh, that's so it's so organized, and I don't like organization, and I just do my thing wherever." I go, "Great, come on down and do your thing." we have no closed door policy on anyone. If anyone can fringe the fringe, anyone can show up. If you want to be in a programmed venue and you want us to provide services of a space, technology, lighting, sound, then you have to go through a system to apply for that. We only have so many resources to be able to offer that, so that we have a limited amount. And if that doesn't work, just fringe the fringe.
And where's the Fringe? Because it's Fringe Central, right? Is that what you're talking
Fringe
about?
Central, yeah.
And what building is that?
And so that's going to be in the Dairy Center for the Arts this year.
Mm-hmm.
This year we've usually used 3 venues at the Dairy Center for the Art. There's a performance space, the East Theater, and the Carson Theater, and they're these pretty theatery theaters, lighting, sound, black stage, curtains, etc. And this year, the Dairy and I entered into a dialogue about merging as businesses, as big, large community organizations, to try to create much more of a buzz and a centralization of the festival. I think it's going to be really cool. They're running all the box office and ticketing.
Fantastic.
We're doing everything centralized at the Dairy. We have a beer and wine garden.
I saw that. I'm so excited.
In the lobby of the Dairy, and then we're building a tent out in the front, and that's going to be really cool. Wow. Performances in there. I just met with Willow, this clothing store that's in town, and this is it's interesting because my take on creativity is not just dance, theater, and music.
Right.
My take on creativity is everything. Right. Is food, is
costuming,
is clothing, is and is business too. There's people who show up, and so we were in touch with this group. It's women's clothing, a boutique shop in Boulder called Willow, and they I just met with them yesterday at the Dairy lobby, and they're going to do a pop-up shop.
Really?
Right in the middle of the lobby, on Sunday the 21st in the afternoon. And it just and I love looking at things like that. It's like fashion on the fringe. That's what we're calling it, as fashion on the fringe. and it's great. To me, that's the spirit of the Fringe. We have like as diverse a concept as you can imagine, knowing where it came from and its history, and that everyone is creative. So for every individual, there's some way of being creative, and that doesn't exclude the mainstream, and it doesn't stick to the mainstream only. It's it's a really interesting concept.
I'm really excited. You know what my mind is going about this bus for next year. I'm serious.
Yeah.
David, we could come in if you just provide a parking space. We could be a venue,
you could
and
totally
we could be.
do that.
It could be about our radio show and conscious conversations. We could have a number of people just stop in and give us their take on something.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It would be wild.
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of exciting and fun.
Yeah. And one of the it's actually not a fringe. It's not called a fringe festival, but a lot of people on the touring circuit, refer to it as a fringe festival. But there's this event that happens in Austin, Texas, called Frontiera Fest, and one of the aspects of the festival, I'm not sure. They must still be doing it. I haven't really looked it up for a while, but they used to do this thing called Mi Casa es su teatro, and it means my house is your theater. Right, and so they do this thing where they open it up to neighborhoods, and so a whole neighborhood, like where we live up on Mapleton,
right?
A whole neighborhood will open up their porches and their living rooms, and they'll put on performances in their living rooms. Those will become the venues, and it's just a whole neighborhood. You'll have 20 venues, and they'll be programmed, and they'll have a schedule of events that are going on in everyone's house, and you go house to house, and you see different performances.
Wow, that
really
is cool. That is very, very unique.
I've always wanted to do that in Boulder, and it's starting to happen a little bit. There's another festival on the hill.
When we were kids, we used to do little performances at Christmas. Dress up as sheep and in my grandma's house. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Come down the stairs. And
totally.
Mary and Joseph.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
That was my first performance, I think, too.
Was it?
Yeah, I was a priest. I did it like my mom. I wanted to do it, I think, but I put on a mass, but it was a performance, and we took Italian bread,
right,
and we mashed it up into these little wafer things.
Oh, that's too funny.
And we put little crosses on them, but it was totally irreverent too because we were all kids.
Oh yeah.
It was just
oh yeah.
This is the Holy Spirit, and boink, and each other's heads, and
a little ash symbol, right?
Yeah, little ash symbols, probably everything.
Oh my gosh! So David, you're not from Boulder. You're from Massachusetts.
Yeah, I'm from just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. Boston, Massachusetts. I drove my car out here.
Parked your car?
About
how long ago?
17 years ago.
Okay. And so when did you start the Boulder Fringe?
We started the Boulder Fringe in 2005. And
9 years.
And the way it started in Boulder was really interesting because
I
didn't really that whole history that I just told you about. I didn't actually know it at all. Okay. I didn't know anything about the Fringe. I knew that there was a thing called a Fringe Festival in Edinburgh, Scotland. I didn't know there were other fringes in the world, and I didn't know much else about it. But I was in this task force meeting with the City of Boulder. So the City of Boulder Arts Commission started they started to have a community dialogue because they wanted to talk with arts organizers in the city about bringing the arts together and bringing out Boulder, making Boulder what it wanted to be.
Okay.
In terms of the arts, so I was part of this meeting, and like city meetings, they tend to be, let's talk about what we think, and everyone talks and talks and talks and talks and talks, et cetera, et cetera. And so, and I'm just a do it kind of person. I was invited there because I was the director of the Performing Arts Center at Naropa University.
Yeah.
And I was invited there as a representative of Naropa and a large nonprofit and arts organization in the city. And so I went there to just listen and see what was happening. And of course, everybody was talking about, well, how do we bring people together in an unbiased way? How do we make it not owned by this particular group or that particular group, or how do we do this thing? And at least two different people, maybe three, in that meeting brought up the idea of doing a Fringe Festival. And every time I heard it, I was just like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what that is, And so, we have the internet now. So I started researching the fringes on the internet, and a lot of the fringes at that time were really underspoken. Like the websites weren't very thorough.
Sure.
And you knew you could go to a Fringe Festival and you could apply, but you didn't know what it was necessarily.
Right.
And you had to sort of be in the culture to know what it was. So I was researching. I called Minneapolis.
Okay.
I talked to some Minneapolis people that had run their Fringe, and they were wonderful people. But they were also like in it, and they, you just make a budget, and you just, you ask somebody to get you coffee, and they get you coffee, and like you go out and you have a production assistant, and you make a festival.
Right. That's
you
it.
Just make a festival. So I was kind of digging into that. I asked them for their budget. They sent me a budget. It was confusing as hell. We talked to Orlando, Florida. And then we joined the Canadian Association of Fringe Festivals, which is a really unified group. It's the biggest unified group of Fringe festivals in the world, based in Canada. And, as you would expect from the Canadians. They're very, very open, very artistic, very creative people,
right?
And the government supports the arts very deeply, and there's this big organization there, and they have a lot of American member festivals, North American, from the United States and from Canada, and so we joined that group, and we attended the first conference that year, and that was in late 2004, and so we decided to launch a Fringe Festival because.
So when you say we, you and who else was a part of that first kickoff?
So yeah, I guess I was just realizing that in my mind that there was a significant part of that beginning that we sort of missed. So there was the meetings that we were having, and people were talking about Fringe festivals, and I was really uncomfortable, impatient. And a little bit like, as an organizer, I'm like, I'm either going to come to these meetings and lend my expertise and leave, or we're going to do something, because I don't want to just sit here and
talk about it forever.
I want to either do something or not.
Right.
And so, without any kind of agreement in the group, I just sent out an email to the group. I sent out an email to the group and to everybody that I knew in Boulder, and asked them to relay it to their peeps on email, and just said, this is what we're doing. I'm going to have 2 sessions. The first meeting is just an afternoon meeting in the lobby of the dairy. I'm going to talk about creating an arts festival and what that means, and what kind of input you would want. And then the second meeting, just open to the public, whoever wants to show up and whoever's interested. Second meeting we'll do at Trilogy, which was the Shine Sisters, their former incarnation, and they and we met for just happy hour at Trilogy, now called Shine, and so the first meeting I went to the dairy lobby, and 85 people showed up.
Wow,
85
that's
people
amazing
in the arts community, just based on this one email and with a 2-week notice. And these were people that were that ran the Shakespeare Festival, people that were involved in the university, people that city council members showed up, things like that. So it was like, oh, and I, had Fringe was on the possibility list, and so we did, and I kicked into large family mode, like I'm one of 10 children, and I'm like, okay, all right. How to deal with this many people, right? I was expecting 12, and I get 85 people that are sitting in this lobby going, what do we do now?
Oh, that's exciting!
And so I got really excited, and I just my performer turned on, and I grabbed pieces of paper, and I wrote marketing, fundraising, business development, festival programming, types of art, aesthetic, all these things on the top of a piece of paper, and I broke the group up into about 10 groups of 8-ish, and then they all just beat and went back and forth in these working groups on different subjects in the festival, and then we used the time to kind of report in and cull that information. And then eventually I took the information, what they wrote down and all the notes, and we had a really lively discussion, took all the notes back together, and I built it into a business plan. And as I was looking at all of the things and comparing that to my research about Fringe festivals, I looked at it and I was like, this is a Fringe festival. Because nobody wants to jury, nobody wants to censor work. Everybody wants what Boulder is. Everyone wants to encourage the interaction between touring groups and people coming from outside to mix with local. They want to make sure that it's for locals.
Yes.
But that it isn't isolated and
Yes.
closed off to locals.
I love
and
it.
everything that they said where it was about what was basically a Fringe festival in my mind. And I still think to this day, 10 years later, it is that. It is, it gives them what they asked for, this particular working group of people who represent a lot of different groups in Boulder.
Right.
Interestingly enough, it took probably another 5 years beyond that to really convince that group that what they were asking for was actually this thing. Because our culture doesn't think that way.
Right. No, it's so outside the box. It's like past
Yeah.
the fringe. That kind of thinking is
Yeah,
past
everyone wants freedom.
Right.
And Americans are the last people to give it.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, everybody wants freedom. I want my own freedom. I want a free country. But with these rules, we are the most regulated country in the world, and so this is a program that actually answers that in a very specific way. And it's just like there is no organization on this planet that should have anything to say in how you are creative and how you are on this planet. There's no organization.
I agree.
Unless you choose to do that, unless you choose to be like a church or something. If you choose to join into something, if you choose to be a part of something, if you choose to be a part of the Fringe, you could be a part of the Fringe.
Right.
But that's your choice. It's not because...
It's not mandatory or...
And it's not because some board of people said, this is what we think art is. And now we're going to take this one, and we're going to take that one, and we're going to take that one. It's like how television works.
Yeah.
It's how radio works. It's how the industry works. And the internet is blowing the socks off that.
Yep.
It's like blowing it out of the water now. I mean, we are, for the first time,
thank God,
it's back in the our creative, artistic, and our business culture, and our culture is in the hands of the people right now. Whether that gets regulated and how the internet gets regulated and all that stuff is a different story. But but for now, I mean, we've got, you want to make something, you want to do something, you put it up on the internet, you post it online. You don't have to buy into it. You don't have to be rich. You don't have to be. Nobody's excluded from it anymore. But that's a whole bigger concept. But I would say that the Fringe is very similar to that ideology that it's as the internet. The Fringe communities locally and the Fringe communities internationally, they behave in a very unjuried, unbiased way. That you sign up.
Yeah.
If you wanna do something, you log on and you do something.
I love it. I love it.
It's not a programmed festival.
It's similar to Burning Man. I mean, is it
similar to Burning Man without the expense? Because Burning Man, I think you have to you have a pretty expensive ticket, and then there's you have to get there and build that whole thing, which is wonderful.
Right.
It is similar to Burning Man in this unjuried way. I mean, you do have to pay money to get to the Boulder Fringe too. It's just a little bit less.
It's a lot less expensive. Yeah.
and much more convenient depending on which way you're coming from. And but it's great. It has. There's a lot of different possibilities.
So I'm curious because you start this thing it's a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
So did you find out that all the Fringes, most of them have gone nonprofit? Is that how do you get your funding, and what kind of fundraisers? How easy is it, or is it really like pulling a tooth to get the funds to come in, David? I'm so curious about that because it's the arts again.
Yeah, it is. It's the United States is one of the lowest funded artistic
Isn't that wild?
communities on the planet, and ironically, because it's probably one of the wealthiest nations on the planet.
Yep.
And again, we don't fund the arts first and foremost. It's always like pulling teeth to seek funding. People, generally speaking, the arts funding culture in the United States especially in Boulder, in this region, for some reason sees the idea of wealth and money as something that is a privilege to anyone. Like if you're seeking funding from me, if I'm a grantor and you're seeking funding from me, then it's that I'm doing you a favor.
You need to bow down and kiss my feet, right?
You need to show that you're going to be doing something integral to the community, which is valid.
Right.
You need to show us that you're going to be using this money wisely. It's like that dad, the dad mentality. Yeah, it's like the dad mentality. Like you want money, and your dad's just like, well, I need to know that you're going to be spending it wisely.
So it's a lot of strings attached.
There's a lot of strings attached, and this is our funding culture that we live in, a very patriarchal,
you bet,
masculine funding structure.
Yes,
and that's what happens. And I've been on this warpath for the past like at least 7 to 10 years, which is about looking at like who's doing who the favor here, like really.
Right.
Like we've created this festival that is creating value in your culture. That's giving everybody a voice, an equal voice. That's raising the aesthetic and creating creating a community that's worth living in.
Right.
And you're telling me I have to prove that to you?
Right.
Like open your eyes and look at what we're doing here. Look at what's happening. There's a movement afoot. Look at what's happening on the internet. Look at what's happening with the festival. Look at what's happening in the artistic culture, and just look at how valuable your community is because of that. Like your businesses get valued by that. The learning culture, the city culture in general, the revenues to the city increase where there's an artistic, creative community. Minneapolis is a great example of it.
So it's not unconditional donations. There's always, it's sort of like people get a birthday present, or people give a birthday present and they expect some thank you card, or whatever.
Right.
And then it's conditional,
Well, and what I want to do is I want to take you back to, where everything in the last couple thousand years has been linear, left brain, rational, science. There's always this creative juice going out, but it's only valid if it's science and facts and all this kind of left brain stuff. But let's go way past. And let's go back to the indigenous cultures, because that was all right brain, dancing and painting and their bodies and music and drumming, and they were having festivals all the time to bring rain and to talk to the spirits of the rain and stuff. So the fringe to me is it's bringing some feminine aspect back to what that balance that's supposed to be coming back, the feminine and masculine, and so that's why these entitled wealthy people, they're still, and what's really funny, I'm just going to jump to this other thing, is our governments, the people that run the show, they know music and art brings people together. It's the last thing they want. It's just like the internet and music and theater and that cohesiveness, and that people start coming alive again and start thinking for themselves. So I can see why that it's a threat.
And it's challenging to the monetary system, because the monetary system is profit based, is consumer based. It looks at things that draw revenue as a means of security, protection. So if I have enough money, then I can protect my family, which is commendable enough.
And it's kind of an illusion at the same time.
Yeah, and it's an illusion at the same time, because you're protecting your family from what?
Yeah.
If you're hoarding that wealth and you're abusing your environment and you're protecting your family, everybody knows that you squeeze your children too hard, and what's going to happen? Like they're creative beings. They're young creative beings. They're going to burst out. They're going to go out and do their thing anyway. And part of that security means hindsight, means looking into the future, means being part of a community. We're communal beings, and we do much better when we're not on our own. We do much better when we hang around. Even the family structure. Like if you're parents and you have children, you do much better when you're kind and open and you're loving to your children, because everyone wants to support each other, and you're the sum of that group rather than your own individual, and you always hear things. You always hear, you face off with your ego, and you develop as humans that way. But if you can somehow create the illusion, if you have the resources to protect yourself from communalizing, if you have the resources to just buy everything you need and just have everything at your fingertips given to you, and be spoon-fed, and be helped into your chair when you want to get into your chair, and helped into your car when you want to get into your car, then you don't really need a body anymore. You can just be helped around the planet. I mean, it's not a very healthy way to develop as a human being.
Not only that, David, there's absolutely no fun in it. There's no expansion, and there's no growth.
Yeah.
It's like you said. Why bother coming in and taking on a body?
Yeah. Why bother taking on a body? I mean, I also have a lot of compassion for that, in that if someone, if I'm coming from the world that I come from, like, probably upper middle class, maybe middle class world,
right.
Family that, big family, struggled with money but didn't have issues with it. Right. Coming from that place, if someone like tossed $1 million at me, I'd be like, wow, awesome, I'm going to have fun, and it's going to turn on a certain part of my life that I think is really valuable.
Right.
It's just that what I think in terms of, and what I'm saying in terms of creativity, is not that, I don't think money is the root of all evil. I think that what people do with it there's a threat that they can destroy themselves with it, because they put their body in atrophy. They decide that I can pay for everything, and I can make everything go away. I can make all my pain, all my suffering go away by buying things. And I think, I don't know.
It's kind of like, who's the master?
It doesn't sound like rocket science to me.
No.
I believe in wealth. I believe wealth is power.
Right.
And I also don't think that that's the center of our being. I think actually creativity is.
I agree.
Actually think that spirituality is. I think that we're much bigger than our egos. And so, it's a big, complex dialogue, but it's...
Right.
But that, to me, is the root of creativity. Is like, why would we focus on something like our own feet,
right,
and our own tools, and our own arms, and our own eyes and ears, and why would we approach that in a creative way? And to me, that's because that's really all we have at the end of the day.
That's right.
All I have is this body that's very temporary, and the breath that goes into it, and then the spirit spark that's in the center of it. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is the essence of creativity. It's not beyond that. But
right,
a la creativity.
Yeah.
That involves money. That involves the possibility of wealth and consumer.
Right.
I like to view that with a sort of a permeable
right.
view. Like,
well, and it should be, because that's right now. That's just the tool that has shown up as a way of exchanging energy in some way.
Yeah.
So, and who knows where they'll go to. And I know Tim has given us the time thing. David, give us information, how people can get the tickets, the website. Just give a nice big commercial for the Fringe.
Yeah. It's very simple. www.boulderfringe.com. It tells you everything. This year's festival is September 17th to the 28th, 2014. And what else to know about that? We produce events in the community year round, but that's our big hoo-ha. It's the big celebration at the end of the Fringe year, is the end of September. And then throughout the year we do monthly events. We co-produce with groups like the Society for Creative Aging. We produce with groups that normally would have inhibitions producing their own work or do things, because we try to encourage that creative spirit to be in everybody. So we do things throughout the year as well. But those are just to keep in motion. And then our application process for artists. Tune into the www.boulderfringe.com. In December is when we publish our application for the next year. Got it. And then tune in now for tickets, and all the tickets are online. All the information's online. There is a phone number if you're a phone person, and that's 303-803-5643. And there's a ticket line that's 303-440-7826. And those are the numbers.
Fantastic, thanks. But I do have one more question because I want our listeners to really hear this and participate. If I could grant the Fringe 3 wishes, what would they be? I want the listeners to hear this. So what are 3 things?
3 wishes.
Yeah, what are 3 wishes that you would wish for the Fringe? Because I just like it. It's a very unique question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that I think I thought about this once.
Well, you had to because you gave it to me.
I must have, but I can't remember what I said. But I'm going to say whatever.
Whatever comes to. It's important right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the first wish would be that that the Fringe Festival on the Fringe festivals on the planet continue to grow to the point where there is no longer a need to create Fringe festivals.
I like that. That's wonderful.
Because the Fringe Festival is a response to a consumer culture, to a commodified artistic culture that disables the individual, and so the response is, this is all of ours. And if we had a planet that realized that we would have no need for a Fringe Festival, because people would be creative by nature and they would apply that to everything that they do in life, and there would be no need to rationalize that, organize it in a way that draws it out of your local communities.
It would be happening.
It would be happening all the
All the time.
So if there was a way that the Fringe Festival could just dissolve because it was no longer needed, that would be my first wish.
I love it.
The end of the Fringe.
The end of the Fringe. The second wish maybe is something that could be a stepping stone to that. Would be that it really takes off like wildfire. That it really becomes a household item. That people get it. That people start to understand it more, and that it just becomes something that's known to people as an option, as a way to, as an outlet for their own creativity, and things like the bus.
Right.
Exactly, is a great example of it. That, oh my God, we have this world that we live in. We do this radio show. We're creative beings. We love to have musicians and artists involved in our lives, and we happen to be driving around in a venue.
I just think it's great.
Like the realization that that aesthetic can hit other people.
Yes.
And that it really, my wish for that would be that it gets into the mainstream in some way. Because I don't think Fringe is a non-mainstream topic. I just want to do aside. I'm going to do a little aside for a minute. I had this. I talked to the mayor of Boulder in 2008-ish, Sean McGrath.
Okay. And
we had lunch, and we went to Southern Sun or somewhere in Boulder, and we were sitting down, and he said a really interesting thing to me. I said, why do you want to eat lunch with the director of the Fringe? And he said, well, anything to the left I want to support, because I'm a liberal guy. I just want to make sure that, that Boulder stays weird, that Boulder stays liberal, that Boulder's a kind of hip, interesting place. And I said, I basically agree with you, but I just want to clarify one thing in terms of where I'm coming from with the Fringe. I said, it's not only everything to the left to me.
It's
like
all.
If George W. Bush wanted to put on a show, then that would be my priority. I'm like, if that mainstream cultural mindset decided that they wanted to get into this idea of Fringe, we're preaching to the choir on the left.
Yes.
Like, I think who the Fringe is for are for people that don't get it, actually. That
can tap back into their creative being.
Jump back into their child. Being. Because we all know that, as artists, as creative beings that are out there practicing that's, we're already doing it.
Yeah.
But it's the people that don't. So I said I would like to see, that. So that's along the lines of that wish, that it becomes a mainstream part of our culture.
You mean Republicans can participate in the Fringe?
Republicans can participate in the Fringe.
And independents too.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, we actually have a workshop instructor this year who's very conservative, Republican, and he's a great guy. I mean, I've worked with him a few times, and it's been great to work with people like that, because it really is. I mean, especially, I don't know. I have this secret love for Republicans. Like I have a secret love for Hitler or something,
Yeah.
because I do think, like, it's my mom and me, that the people that are suffering the most are the oppressor.
Yes, you're right.
Are the ones that are oppressing. Those are the people who are suffering. Those are the people who need the prayers. Those are the people who need the support, and those are the people who need creativity more than anybody.
You bet.
Because it's a possibility for our world if we stay focused on who we are as creative beings, and if we stay focused on the enlightened beings, then we're just a tight pocket of enlightened beings,
Right.
Nice.
Right. I love it. That's amazing. You know what? I'm getting these ideas, David. This always happens to me in Radio Universe. So, Carolee and I come from a town of 3,000 people, Canton, South Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we grew up in a small town. We didn't grow up in Minneapolis or any big town. And all of a sudden I can see it would be so cool to not just have it happen in these big cities, but small towns. I remember watching the movie, I've probably watched it 20 times, Dangerous Beauty. It was back in the Venetian time. Mm-hmm. And it was in Venice, Italy. And of course, you're Italian, so you'd love this.
Yeah.
So
I saw it.
Yeah, it's one of the most amazing. I use it as a rites of passage for both my girls, because it was about
courtesan
culture?
Yeah,
the courtesan culture. And it was so beautiful how, women couldn't even, if you were a courtesan, and you could go into a library.
Yeah.
As a woman, nobody was. You couldn't learn how to read. You couldn't go into the library, and they were the ones, because the men wanted intelligent women to be with, right?
Yeah.
So they were allowed in, and a whole world opened up to these beautiful women as courtesans, professional, high-end, companions. Yes, sex was involved sometimes it wasn't. It was just companions. It was intellectual conversation, and just think of, and that's what they did every Friday and Saturday night. They would gather at pockets in these really beautiful places where the water in Venice, what do you call the canals, the waterways in Venice, Italy, where they would and have wine, and somebody would start with poetry, and they would stop at one line, and somebody had to pick it up, and they would see who's 2, 3, or 4 liner they like better. That's the Fringe. So wouldn't it be cool? I mean, my mind's going is if we got some of these smaller towns, maybe you can't go to a town of 3,000 yet, but 20,000 and 15,000, and had a little mini Fringe, and where they could even keep it like we're talking in these northern states. That's why Canada has the biggest Fringe. They're locked in for 9 to 10 months. Mm-hmm. So we gotta get creative, or we're gonna die. We'll die inside, right? So wouldn't it be cool if that started? And then what about as this adult Fringe is going on? Maybe before the adult Fringe, before the end of summer, there's a mini children's Fringe. Wouldn't it be cool if Isabel decided she wants to just go up and do a little hip-hop song? It doesn't matter if it only lasts 30 seconds, but she had the guts to get up and perform in front of a bunch of other little kids.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yep.
That's exciting to me. I mean, it's like, yes, it could. And you know what that would do? It would change the entire structure of this planet. It would take it from one of fear and illusion and greed and not enough to one of, we have so much, our cup overrunneth. It's the thing. It is the one thing that could change how the government structures, the banksters, the big farmer, the corporate farming, all that would have to go away, because we'd all be requiring something different.
Yeah.
More community driven.
Yeah, and I don't know that it would necessarily go away. Our technological support, our balance of power on the globe in terms of like military and all this hierarchical structure. I don't know that it would go away, but at least I look forward to the day that it starts to become self-aware.
No kidding.
I'm not even going as far as the utopia yet.
Right. No, I'm not either.
I'm looking at that idea that we can look at that. I mean, I've known actually a lot of very conservative, very right-wing people that, without necessarily the people that you hear about in the news, like the Westboro Baptist Church or whatever is going on. I mean, you hear these really extreme, the Tea Party, the Westboro Baptist Church, But I think they're a very small group of people. In every sense of the word, small.
Right, got it.
And I think what's happening is that there is a lot of intellect and a lot of open-heartedness and a lot of potential within both sides of the spectrum. Both, I'm calling it right and left wing, but I mean it's up and down. It's north, south, east, and west.
Yep.
It's heaven and earth.
It's all there.
It's all every type of person in every direction has basic human goodness and has basic human spirit,
right.
And whether we've gotten lost or we're been shielded from that because of something, because of trauma, whatever, whether we've gotten lost doesn't mean it's not there. So it's really important for programs like this to come out, to bring that out, to actually to say to anybody, you have, like, what do you think is right? What do you think, like, even as challenging as it sounds, even going to someone like the Westboro Baptist Church and saying, we want to hear you. We want your voice to be on the stage. And they're like, great, we're putting it out there, and we're making sure that we get in all the press, and we're making sure that this is happening, and we're being controversial enough to do that. Like, what happens if you put it in a Fringe Festival?
Oh my gosh.
Like, you've got people that are going to start talking about it. You've got people that they're going to present their view. They're going to put it out there loud and clear, but then you've got audience reviews on the websites. You've got ratings. You've got, like, people start a dialogue about it, and they start talking about this. And I think that's one of the most important things that we could do for tightly wound conservative people.
Right.
That's one of the most important things that we could do, is listen to them.
Yes.
Even though it's the most contrary to what many of us artists think, is like,
shut them down.
Them down.
Right.
Like I think I'm going to say this loud and clear into the radio listeners. I'm going to say this like loud and clear. The worst possible thing that you can do as a creative being on this planet is to be oppressive.
That's right.
Like, because somebody is oppressive to you. That's the whole reason why they're oppressive.
It's tit for tat. That doesn't work. It's an eye for an eye. Does not work. That's
it makes
old.
the whole world blind. Right?
Yes, thank you for saying that. I hope you guys all heard that out there.
So it's not like, so welcome them. You welcome them. You open up your hearts. You open up your doors. You say, this is a possibility that you can come into this format and you can have your voice. You can actually join the Fringe Festival. You can actually put up a show, and you can actually be wrong.
Absolutely. And you know what? And what's so really cool is, and what we really find out deep inside our hearts, nobody's ever wrong, because you're just coming from their perspective and their truth. So, and I can just see, so the word I keep getting when I brought up how it could change the world, and now I'm not looking for utopia, because then you're not growing, really. But it's just, there would be a beautiful softening and an allowing that would allow people to maybe loosen up the tightness of whatever their belief system is and try something new, and allow themselves to remember who they really are as a creative being. Because when I look at George Bush, I am George Bush. There's some aspect of him that's still inside of me. So how can I not only open up my hearts, but love that person who's given me a mirrored reflection back as something that I might want to change, or I might not want to change. But that would certainly open up Pandora's box to a beautiful world of allowing, which is what we're all about. So David, thank you so much for coming all the way out to hygiene.
Should we do Wish 3?
Wish 3. You got it? You got a Wish 3?
We got time. We'll do Wish 3.
Yeah.
Wish 3 is that I think I haven't thought about it yet, but I knew that I didn't do a Wish 3.
I knew you didn't either.
Wish 3 would be that I hope that this year's Fringe Festival is a really successful Fringe Festival that this is a big transition year for the festival. We got hit with a flood last year, and it really knocked us down financially, and the community pulled together around it to support it. And this is a big year where I'm kind of taking a couple steps back for my own personal reasons. And my wish for the festival is that it takes off from this point, that it really becomes more integrated into the Boulder community, that 2015 is bigger and better than ever, and that and I see that I get to see the child grow and flourish, and I get to step back as a parent.
I love it. I love it. Pushing the underling, the yearling out, the little birdie out of the nest and having it take off because the community wants to step in.
Yeah, and I think actually, it's like I said, in terms of the parent holding too tight, it feels like that year for me where its health is dependent on my letting go.
Perfectly said. I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah.
With my children also. So, we're all doing that with our children.
Yeah.
So, and even my childish thinking, I'm letting those go too. So, whatever it is, we always got
hard.
the child.
It's real hard.
It is
because
hard.
you've been conditioned. I mean, I would imagine I'm not a mom and I'm not a woman.
Right.
So I'm not physically and psychically and intuitively
hormonally
connected to my child in the same way. But
Yes.
I have an experience of birthing this project, and I can only imagine a human being that creative project and having to protect it and stand up for it and nurture it, and knowing that you can't just cut it loose at year 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 or 15 sometimes, like knowing that it's not healthy for that being to let them go, to have to let them go, and to know that you're at that point where it's like I need to step and let this thing fly.
Absolutely.
Is very it's counterintuitive.
It is counterintuitive
because your intuition is what's been telling you to protect and hold on.
Yep. So thank you for that, because all the mothers out there, I know you can relate to the letting go and to the stepping out of the way to watch your children become the creation of their journey and their life and the creator. So David, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All you listeners, I hope you get out. If you're local Boulder, local Denver, anywhere, come to the Boulder Fringe, because not only is, we've been to a couple of them. They're fantastic. We'll be here through the Fringe Festival, so we'll be showing up at a couple of those performances. But Boulder is a destination place. Fantastic eateries. I'm going to be interviewing next week on Tuesday. I'm not sure what Thursday broadcasting I'll be releasing it, but a Three Sisters spin from Shine Restaurant, Jill, Jessica, and Jennifer. And so you'll be sure to look for that broadcast in the next probably 3 or 4 weeks. I always try to release a broadcast if they're trying to promote something like right before. So, David, thank you so much. And make sure you go to LifeStyle Luminairies. That's LUMINARIES.com. Not only is our radio button up there, but a lot of interesting blogging and posts by my partner in life, Tim Braff, or let's just call him Timmers. Timothy, Light of God. So enjoy your week until next Thursday with Magical Moments with Tracy Joe. Take care.
And remember to join Chelisa and I each and every Thursday at 4:30 Eastern Time, where we indulge you in casual conversations on consciousness with interesting guests and expansive ideas. And don't forget to visit our website, LifeStyleLuminaries.com, where you can explore more ways to enlighten your life or listen to our radio show archives on the radio tab. Have a